I'm Spencer, and dang it if this isn't my MS story. It's actually my sixth video, like my sixth edition in this story about having multiple sclerosis. And I've had it 5 years since being diagnosed, and more like 20 something years since actually having my first symptoms. 22, 23 years, something like that. And this year I turned 50, and I gotta say, in general, I'm doing pretty good. All right, so in this video, I'm just gonna do three things, keep it kind of simple. First one is to describe the disease course that I've experienced, like how I've experienced multiple sclerosis, because dang it, if that disease isn't like super variable for people. So number one, the disease course. Number two, I'm just gonna talk about the last year, since this is kind of a annual thing for me. I'm kind of like tracking MS every year on these videos. And the third thing I'm going to do is talk about my outlook. All right, so the disease course for me was basically, in a nutshell, gradually crappier over time, and then really, really rough. And for the last 5 years, it's been pretty good. So basically, when I was about 28, 29, I started to have some symptoms, all sensory stuff, like, numbness and tingling, things like I just couldn't feel my feet super great for a few months, stuff like that. And as I mentioned in these videos before, over time, in my 20s and 30s, I went to see different doctors, hoping to get some answers. And that never worked out for me. Every time I went to a doctor, they kind of thought it was something other than MS. And I did get some scans, but I got like brain scans and they didn't show any lesions, so it was pretty much determined I didn't have multiple sclerosis. But it turned out in the end that I have a bunch of lesions on my spinal cord and not in my brain. Anyway, I was misdiagnosed for a long time. And like I said, I started out with sort of mild symptoms. Like I got some numbness and tingling. It was annoying, but not debilitating or anything like that. And then it would go away for a couple years. Like, I just didn't have any problems. I had it in my feet, had it in one arm, and that never got totally better, but it wasn't like that big of a deal. And basically over time, those exacerbations just started getting more prevalent. So I would have one every couple of years, then I would have one a year, then I would have a couple different ones kind of stacked on top of each other. And so basically it was getting kind of fast and furious and not fun, especially when I had vision problems. I developed like double vision off to one side, then I had double vision like top and bottom, and I lost my vision pretty much. I had optic neuritis where my eyes just went dark, kind of like dark and spotty. It was like you could see, but you were walking around at night kind of a thing. I also had just some crazy nerve pain sensation stuff. So originally I started out with some numbness and tingling, but darn it if after a while I didn't have like hardcore pain, like if I was walking barefoot on carpet, it felt like I was walking on glass. And I also had this thing in my abdomen, and I'll never forget it. It felt like I'd been dragged behind a truck on a chain, and all the skin was just worn off on my stomach. And it looked fine. It was like totally fine. But man, if a t-shirt or something would touch that, it was rough. So anyway, yeah, I had some hard stuff going on. Nothing as bad as I know a lot of people have with MS. A lot of people, they lose their ability to think and speak and walk and talk and all that stuff. I guess talk and speak are the same thing. But anyway, a lot of people have some really hellaciously bad stuff with MS. And I haven't really had that. I've had some stuff, but not too bad. I finally went to see an MS specialist down in St. Louis, and she did the spinal tap, and she did a full scan, brain and spinal cord, and she saw lesions. The spinal tap came back as showing a bunch of bands, and she diagnosed me solidly with MS. Now, that was 5 years ago, and at that point, I read a bunch of books about diet and MS and anti-inflammatory diets and stuff like that. And I decided not to take the disease-modifying drugs, any of the MS drugs. First, it was like Copaxone. I was prescribed. I didn't do that. And then all the other ones like Tysabri and all that stuff. I decided not to do the drugs. I was instead going to try to treat the disease by raising my vitamin D levels. They were really low. and going on an anti-inflammatory diet. Basically focused on eating whole foods and not cooking a bunch of stuff and limiting processed foods and all that. Anyway, I made those dietary changes. I also started at that point to kind of reduce and minimize the stress in my life, you know, like the freaking out stuff. And I also tried to reduce the physical stress. Like I tried to develop more routines, you know, same bedtime, get up at the same time, sleep enough, like all that kind of stuff. And darn it, if I haven't gone the last 5 years without an exacerbation. All right, so that has been the disease course for me so far. Age 50, I've got some residual stuff going on, some damage that I incurred in all those exacerbations for all those years. Some of that stuff I just carry with me. It hasn't gotten totally better, but I'm pretty functional. I lead a pretty active life. And in this past year, I think I've even bumped it up a little bit, doing even more physical activity. All right, so this past year has been the year one of the COVID pandemic. And I say year one because I don't know where this thing's going in the future, but this past year has been pretty wild. At the beginning of the year, I was working as a handyman contractor kind of guy, doing just like, you know, jobs in people's houses around town. And when the pandemic hit, man, people stopped calling me for work, and I didn't want to go in people's houses because I was really worried about getting COVID. Like I did not want to get that disease. So I kind of regrouped. I was out of work for like a month or so. And after a month or so, I kind of got back on my feet and started tree service here in town. I had done a little bit of tree work, you know, like pruning and trimming and stuff, but it had kind of been a dream of mine to be a tree worker. That might sound weird to you, but it was. You know, someone who like climbs trees and removes them and cuts them down and cares for them and all that stuff. So I started a tree service, and I've been doing that this past year. The business has been going really well. It has been a little bit more stressful than I thought I could handle, but I've been doing good. So, you know, I've been dealing with that. And it has been physical as all heck, like hard work most days. And I'm still getting my sleep, I'm still eating right and all that, and it seems like I'm doing okay. I might be pushing it a little bit with the physical work, but I just love it so much. I just feel like, what the heck, I'm just gonna do it. So anyway, that's what I've been doing the last year. I've been avoiding COVID, totally working outside, not going to people's houses, not socializing face to face with people. And for me, it's just been wild to see how this disease, this COVID disease, has kind of mapped onto MS in some ways. Like, I'm not saying they're related, but they have similarities. Like there's neurological similarities, the neurological damage that COVID can do. It's also, COVID is a disease that's like really variable. You know, it's like some people get it one way and other people get it another way. And that is really similar to MS. And then some of the treatments, like steroids, are totally the same treatments that some people get who have MS. So anyway, I've just been thinking about that. I also, once the vaccines became available here in the US, like late December, early January, I was very wary about getting a vaccine. Like I kind of wanted to be the last guy in line. You know, from my perspective, I didn't want to get COVID having MS because it had the potential to rev up my immune system and lead to an exacerbation. At least that's kind of was my suspicion. And there has been some research now published about the relationships between COVID and multiple sclerosis, all kinds of stuff. But I also was a little bit worried about getting the vaccine because, you know, vaccines can rev up the immune system, get you fired up to fight off this kind of false intruder of the vaccine. And I kind of was worried about that. I also know that live vaccines have not been recommended for people with MS because they can lead to exacerbations. Anyway, I kind of debated for a while if I was even going to get the vaccine or when, but after 4 months or so, I decided to do it, and I am starting the vaccine course, and I'm optimistic about that. If it does end up biting me in the back end, that'll be a bummer, but for me, I just want to be able to travel a little bit, see my kid, stuff like that, so I'm doing it. All right, so that's a little bit about the past year. Let me just describe my outlook having multiple sclerosis at age 50 and doing what I'm doing. Basically, I would say I've got a pretty optimistic outlook. You know, I'm just gonna say this, like this is one of those things you kind of jinx yourself if you say this, but I kind of almost feel like I'm cured of the disease. Not the effects, like I have I have effects in my body. Like I have neurological damage that I live with that limits my ability to do certain things. And nothing too bad, but I've got a little bit of that. But I sort of wonder if I'm ever gonna have another exacerbation, you know? Like I've been 5 years without any new flares, and I haven't had a scan in the last year because of this COVID stuff, but I was getting a scan, you know, like an MRI of the brain and the spine. I was doing that every year, and it wasn't showing any new lesions or anything. So at least right now I'm in remission. I feel good about that. I'm kind of confident that that's gonna stay that way because I'm doing exactly the same stuff. I'm not changing anything. But you know, diseases can be wicked. They can have surprises. They can just come around and get you in the end. So if things change with MS, I still try to remember that whatever happens, I'm just gonna get the most out of life, you know? If that means having less mobility or other serious disabilities, I think the important thing with those is to figure out a way to live with them, you know, not to necessarily struggle with them, be destroyed by them. There are some amazing role models in the MS community, role models of people who have had just rough times with multiple sclerosis, and they still seem to have like a will, like a spirit about them that's good. So anyway, that's kind of my outlook. I'm optimistic with just a little bit of caution, but mainly just optimistic. At least for me, like for this dude right here, this disease has turned course. And 5 years in to not having exacerbations and feeling pretty good and doing what I want to do, working outdoors and stuff, I'm pretty optimistic about it. Anyway, so that's my MS story. I'll just close by saying I absolutely love connecting with people here on YouTube. Throw me a comment down below. I will absolutely respond. It's just really cool that we have this opportunity to post videos about ourselves, about whatever's going on, talk to each other via the comments and messages and emails and stuff. And I just think it's really great. I also, once in a while, every month or so, I will search for that term, my MS story. I'll put quotes around it, and I'll look for the most recent videos on YouTube. Not the big popular ones, you know, like there's some videos that like everybody watches, but the ones that were posted like a week ago and have like 3 views. And man, they are powerful videos. Just this idea of telling your story, like your story of what happened to you and what happened medically and physically and emotionally and all that stuff. It's just the best. Anyway, I wish you the best. Thanks for checking out my video, and I'm gonna be posting another My MS Story video right here in 1 year. That's gonna be 2022. All right, thanks for checking it out.